Hi, my name is Julia M. Spencer. I'm a real estate advisor, investor, and your number one source for real estate advice online. And in this video, we're going to talk about Julia's cheat sheets. And before we get started with the video, I wanted to just let you know real quick to go to my website. It's at the bottom of this video, juliamspencer.com. Subscribe there to my newsletter if you'd like. Check out my audiobooks and leave a comment to this video if you find it useful. Share it with your friends and click the bell and subscribe buttons right here on YouTube as well, so you can be notified when I have new videos coming up. So in my channel, we talk about anything and everything related to real estate investing, specifically for the small scale investor like myself. And today's video, I wanted to share some cheat sheets with you. Now, I don't know if you work the same way I do. I'm kind of just sharing my methods. I actually use cheat sheets and have used cheat sheets for a really long time for anything. The right terms to use when I used to write proposals for the government, terms to avoid, things to do, cheat sheets for how a particular process works. For example, recently I was asked to host opera at my radio station, which is a really specific process. So I make a cheat sheet about here's what you do, then this is what you do, and then this is what you do. And also in the past, for the government contractors that I've worked, I had to run certain reports which drew information from different databases in a special order. So you make cheat sheets for just about everything. I have actually a little notebook, I can show it to you, that has all my cheat sheets basically in one notebook, because I had so many papers flying around and I wasn't able to find the things that I needed. So I wanted to condense some of those cheat sheets, but also I want to share some of them with you as I find them, because some of them are really useful in our day-to-day life, in conducting business, or even with dealing with other people. Now, this particular cheat sheet has to do with how to deal with difficult people, and you might encounter them in negotiations in real estate, or you might encounter them in your personal life. I've made this cheat sheet specifically actually according to a book on negotiation. I think I posted some videos, or I'm going to post some videos about that particular book that I've read on how to negotiate. But I also made the cheat sheet in order to basically jot down a couple of ways of how to diffuse a rough line situation, like when two people are going head to head and they're not making any progress in getting a deal negotiated. And I also had a recent friend of mine who actually didn't use my cheat sheet, didn't know about my cheat sheet actually, but didn't use the recommendations in this book or in this cheat sheet, or had any of his own to get a deal passed through that I could have helped him with had I known. Had he told me that he was actually negotiating a real estate deal, and of course the deal went flip, so it basically didn't go through, and he didn't get the house, and the lady that was selling him the house didn't sell her house, so it was just didn't turn out very good. So here are my 7 points of how to diffuse a situation where two people are not agreeing and you can't get through to them, and kind of not necessarily to come to a negotiating point for both lines, but more like diffuse a situation that's getting a little bit out of hand. The first one is you can always say, I'm sorry you feel that way, when the other person says something that you don't agree with, but you don't want to fight them on the point, so you just say, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's kind of taking away their weapons from them. They can't really fight that. Somebody feels sorry for something that they said. There's not really any kind of fighting basis here. The second point I have on here is I can accept your faulty perception of me. This is, I guess, kind of useful when it gets a little bit more personal, when the other person is starting to start personal attacks or insults. So I accept your faulty perception of me. Again, it's kind of diffusing the argument, not agreeing with the other person, but diffusing it that it doesn't go any further. Point number 3, I have no right to control how you see me. This might be useful in a situation if you're arguing with a spouse or something, or maybe a child, anybody really. It's a good way to basically say, thanks for starting this fight with me, but I'm not fighting. I'm picking up the ball and I'm walking away, basically. Number 4, I'm not going to engage in your warfare. Now that kind of throws the ball back at them a little bit, because you're kind of insinuating that they're engaging in warfare. And if a person is really angry with you, they're gonna, try to throw stuff at you, insults, and if you're basically identifying those insults as warfare, the other person might get defensive. The next one is number 5. I guess I have to accept how you feel. Again, diffusing the situation, there's nothing the other person can say about that. It's basically agreeing to disagree, more or less. Number 6, your anger is not my responsibility. I really like that one. I'm going to have to use that one more often. Your anger is not my responsibility. Pretty self-explanatory there. Number 7, you're allowed to feel like you choose. Yeah, again, basically giving them their ball back to play in this game of warfare here. There you go. You can feel the way you like to. I don't have to agree with it. I'm not involved. I'm not playing that game, basically. Now, a couple of tips that are made on this cheat sheet as well is when you are engaging in this kind of conversation where it gets a little bit testy with the other person, I made a note to say that you have to look them in the eye, but not in a demeaning way. Stay confident and change the subject, basically, and bring it back to the subject that you guys are actually talking about. So if you're talking about negotiating about real estate and it gets testy and insults are thrown, then get back to the subject. Now I got to give you a little bit of an example. I always have my stories. So I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I worked with a lady that was kind of working as my personal assistant. She was a decorator, designer, and she was a good friend of mine for many years as well. And we had kind of a falling out, unfortunately. But basically, she was engaged in helping me to get this house remodeled. And she had her ideas and plans, and she always had really good ideas. She was a very smart lady. But we had hired basically Joe Schmo off the street because we wanted to do it the cheap way, or I wanted to do it the cheap way. And my perception of how I wanted it done was, let's just get it done the cheapest way possible so we can use the property as soon as possible for tenants, so we can make some money with it. And her perception was, oh, we're going to fancy this up, So expectations were different, and money expectations and budgets didn't quite match. And then the contractor that we hired, of course, was listening to me. He was listening to her, then he was listening to me and to her. And I was kind of like the last say, so he was kind of working according to the way I wanted it done. And every time she saw the work as it was progressing, she would just freak out. And before long, the two of them were just throwing insults, throwing the F word and throwing the, some really bad words against each other. And I don't know how many times, but I had to bring them back to the table, the two of them, and basically say, okay, Joe Schmo off the street, that's not actually his real name, I'm just using that. Joe Schmo off the street has direction to do this the cheapest way possible, so we can't use these really expensive materials. And I didn't buy the expensive materials, I didn't authorize that. And for you, my dear lady helper, personal assistant, what she was working for me as designer, can you please just tone it down, because I want this project done, because right now we're in standstill. You guys are just fighting and nothing is getting done. So a lot of times, basically, I had to bring the conversation from insults and F words to the subject. And if you're engaged in that kind of situation, make sure you do that as well. It takes a lot of practice, It's very stressful to me. It was very stressful. And just to stay professionally above everything was very difficult, but I learned a lot. It was good that I went through this because I learned a lot, and I basically learned which two people not to put on the same project. That was the outcome of this. It was completed, by the way, according to my specifications, and I ended up basically firing both of them, which maybe wasn't the best outcome, but it had to be done. Anyways, another thing that you can say when it gets a little bit testy is to say, I have nothing to respond to this. So you're basically responding, you're acknowledging the other party's concern, but you're not saying anything one way or the other. You're basically staying neutral. So I have nothing to respond to this is another good response that you can have. Now here, this last point, before I finish this video, I know we're going for a while, and I know you guys have complained to me, by the way, I'm getting a little bit wordy with my videos, but I have to bring the information across. So there is, when the other party expects you to do something that you just think is way out of line, it's just basically not possible, and you don't want to do it, it's not going to happen, basically. Instead of just blowing up and getting real angry and getting upset and starting to throw bad words at the other person, basically say, how am I supposed to do that? Basically ask the other person to explain to you how, with your resources and with your status at that time and with your budget and your other constraints, how you're supposed to do with that. So you kind of throwing the ball back into their field, but you're also making them responsible to find a solution, because we always want to aim for solutions here. We don't want to aim for mutual destruction, basically, but basically say, how am I supposed to do that? And another thing you can say is, what are you asking me to do? Again, that's kind of the same line as, how am I supposed to do that, or what are you asking me to do? It kind of puts the ball into the other person's field. So what I should have said, instead of getting very, very stressed between those two parties, in my previous example, I should have said to each party, is like, how am I supposed to do that with this budget to my designer? And I should have said to the contractor, how am I supposed to get this done with the lack of quality or whatever? You know, whatever he was trying to do, had a really long timeline and it was just not working. The key is never to ask why, because when you say why instead of how or what, you're actually making it more personal. You're while as if you say how or what, it's more solution oriented. I don't know if you can kind of see where I'm getting at. If you say somebody, why did you try? Why did you install a sink that's the cheapest model that you can find at Home Depot? Instead, you should say, how am I supposed to put all the toiletries on the side of the sink when there's absolutely no space because it's so small? You know, kind of like that. Never ask why. And of course, the key trick here at the very end, and I've used this before, and trust me, it works every single time. Of course, you can't use it over and over on the same person because they'll get smart to it, but the one sentence that will always get the other person to respond. For example, if you're waiting for an email response and you're not getting anything, you calling and you're not getting a call back, and you need to really get a hold of this person and resolve whatever issue you have, this is the one sentence that you say that will immediately get the other person to respond. It reads, so, I guess you've given up on, and then state the project, whatever it is that you want to have done. And that puts the other person immediately on the defensive, and even if they're not going to respond the way that you want them to, they're going to respond, because they're going to say, oh, no, I haven't given up on it, if the project is really important to them. Now, if they still don't respond, then yes, they've given up. But this is a very hard sentence to not respond to. So I guess you've given up on blah 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 project. Use it, try it on your spouse, try it on your kids if you want to, but if the project is important to the other person, they will respond to this. So I hope you like my cheat sheet for today. Here's my cheat sheet. I can now put this to bed as I now have a video that I can watch myself when I need it. And anyways, I hope you like this advice. I hope you find it useful. I hope you can share it. Make sure you leave comments, respond to other people in the threads too. I read them. I don't always respond to them, but I do definitely read all YouTube comments and all emails sent to me as well. My email address is in the bottom description of this video as well. And share my videos, and don't forget to subscribe at my website, juliamspencer.com. By the way, website is being updated, so we're going to have a new look here really soon. And I hope to see you investing very successfully very soon. Have a great day. Bye.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.